Okay. Thanks, Tech Vancouver, for having me here tonight. I've been having a lot of conversations lately about the impending tech startup winter. The investment climate's cooling, the economy's going into recession, valuations are dropping precipitously. It's really interesting because the thing that protects your startup in this kind of environment is a thing that you should be doing anyways, which is running your company cheaply. When your company is cheap to operate, it becomes a lot harder to kill. And like it's kin in the back alleys of Gastown, it becomes an invincible cockroach. And so I'm here to talk about how we started a thinking ape during the last nuclear winter in 2008. La cucaracha, bitches. Quick about me for context. I worked as a software engineer at Amazon.com. I went down to the Valley to do Y-Combinator, where our first product was a group chat platform called Chatterus. And then we went into free-to-play mobile games that were nothing more than thin veils over kick-ass chat rooms. And so back to my story. I'm not sure if you guys can see this, but this is a picture of our apartment and the dead rat outside. So in 2008, Y Combinator only gave you about $15,000 to run your company over 3 months, and that was not a lot of money. And so we decided that we had to keep costs as low as possible. So we ended up moving into quite possibly the most depressing apartment in the world. We had no furniture except for futons and the shittiest IKEA desk and like a laptop that just gave you carpal tunnel syndrome. And so, and we also had office chairs. And when we wanted to eat, we would roll our chairs into like this really depressing living room and eat like out of this evil mystery stew. And this mystery stew was like this like pot full of like, it was like continuously boiling leftovers from whatever meal we could scrape together. And it was disgusting. It was like depression, despair, and evil in a pot. And we ate it. And honestly, we didn't eat much better than the rats, but boy, was that cheap. And so, that was one of the most productive like intervals of my entire life. Eat, sleep, code, eat mystery stew. That's all I did. We were complete cheapskates. I don't know if you guys can see this, but this is a really shitty looking mock-up of the first version of our web product. And it's terrible. You can tell we had absolutely no design experience. And it's funny because I was showing this to a YC partner, and he was in charge of, he was an expert in user interface design, and he sat down, and he didn't say a thing. He looked at it, and he blinked twice. He got up, and he left the room. And he came back with this textbook, and the textbook was like, how to do user interface design for dummies. And he made me read it before he talked to me again. And so we were so bad at everything, but we were committed to being successful. We knew, we had this conviction, this irrational conviction that we were going to succeed, even if we had to improve one painful step at a time. And so the interesting thing about YC is it all revolves around a single event called Demo Day. And Demo Day is an event that happens at the end of 3 months where you present your startup to a room full of the best investors in Silicon Valley. And so in the middle, halfway through the program, there's a thing called Internal Demo Day, where you demo your startup to the other startups in your batch. And it's kind of like this high school yearbook exercise where we rank each other in terms of who's most likely to succeed. And because we sucked at everything, we were dead last. And this did not bode well for 2008. For in a couple of months, we were going to demo to investors in the worst investment climate seen in decades. And so on top of that, life happened. My co-founder was going through a bad breakup with his girlfriend, and I found out that my girlfriend had been cheating on me while I was at YC, but absolutely nothing was going to kill us. And so I sat down with Paul Graham, who was the founder of Y-Combinator, and I said, look, if we don't get any traction, if we don't get any funding, I'm gonna move back to goddamn Canada. I'm gonna live in my parents' basement, and I'm gonna work on my startup. And so we were really committed, we were cheap as hell, and we were impossible to kill. And this turned out to be, looking back, a very useful thing for us. All the progress that we made actually helped us. After demo day, because we had this attitude that we were going to succeed with or without investors, it actually turned into high school. We became this cheerleader that all the investors wanted but couldn't have, right? And because of that, we were actually more appealing to them, and we were actually able to close our round within a month. This relentless pursuit of progress allowed us to eventually become one of the top grossing mobile game developers in the world. And all because of one thing, because we were hard to kill, right? Nothing can kill us. A shitty apartment, rats, the evil mystery stew of depression, flaky investors, being last place, shitty girlfriends, nuclear winters, nothing was going to kill us. And that, my friends, is why it's great to be a cockroach, right? Instead of valuation, think about growing your revenue, right? And think of growing from VC money, think about growing from sound unit economics. Instead of talking to investors, talk to your goddamn users, right? Doing a startup is like chewing glass and staring into the abyss. Do you think a unicorn's gonna survive that? Anyways, that's all I have, folks. Thanks for listening to me.
Okay, so time for some Q&A for you.
All right. How does this work? Do I give a microphone to someone, or?
Where's the second? They'll run around. They'll run around. Yeah, well, where's the second mic on? Questions? I'll run around. I need the exercise.
Or they shout the question, he repeats the question.
Yeah, you can do that.
Okay.
Awesome. I'm pretty loud. So is there a time when a startup should seriously consider killing their idea versus taking the cockroach mentality?
So for those who didn't hear, it was, when do you kill your idea, or do you take the cockroach mentality and dig in? If I knew the answer to that, I would be a billionaire, right? So the short answer is I have no idea. In fact, many of our investors thought that we were being too irrational when we were digging in.
I would suggest listen to what the customer says.
Listen to what the customer says. Fair enough.
Being at YC, what do you see most companies waste money?
So being at YC, you asked, what do you see most companies waste money on?
Where's the biggest waste usually that they prevents from being a cockroach?
Really nice offices. Beautiful, Dropbox has this really, really expensive structure that costs $100,000. And they wrote a note, they kept it as a reminder to not spend too much on useless shit. Any other questions? That's a good question. So she asked, what do you recommend not taking shortcuts on for spending money? Really, it's anything that's going to allow your business to grow in terms of its fundamentals, right? So if you're talking about scaling some crazy infrastructure company, then don't splurge, don't be cheap when it comes to finding the best engineers, right? If you are looking at, if you're a heavy design company and you need really great productivity tools, don't pirate them and get sued for them later. If you have discovered the magical formula of the cost of customer user acquisition is less than their LTV, then do not be afraid to spend on marketing, right? Anything that allows your company to grow in terms of its fundamentals is great. Adversely, if you're spending in a way that's not good and not sustainable, then you're just going to die. For example, a lot of people spending on marketing with no way to attribute how valuable that marketing is. In the back.
So you talk about cockroaches as if you either choose being cockroach or being a unicorn. So when do you choose being one or the other, or is there such thing as a mystical uniroach?
That's a good question. Someone asked, when do you transition between being a cockroach and a unicorn, or is there a mystical uniroach? You know what? It's always been my dream that cockroaches kind of being have you guys heard of water bears? Water bears is the hardest to kill organism ever, and when it's in outer space, it just desiccates and dries up. And then when there's water and moisture in life, it just reabsorbs that moisture and expands to its full potential. Right? So maybe it's not a uniroach, maybe it's like a water bear. These are all really stupid metaphors, right? But like, cockroaches can become really big too, right? They don't always have to be like digging in and trying to survive. Like in the prehistoric ages, they were like as big as like a car, right? And so I mean, like, you should never be afraid of like growing if the growth opportunity actually exists for you. Last question.
What would you say the best way to pitch to investors for a startup in Vancouver would be?
The best way?
Yeah, the most efficient way or the best source, would you say?
Have you ever watched Silicon Valley? There's this guy, he like puts his balls on the table. You can do whatever you want if you have traction, right? Nothing else matters, right? And honestly, like, I actually am not good at pitching investors because by the time we pitched, we had traction. And like, when you have traction, investors will come looking for you. And so the best way to pitch investors is just to be like, look how successful I am. That's right. Right? All right.